Welcome to another edition of the Routine Jumper Daily Podcast, the podcast where we discuss NBA basketball 5 times a week. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for daily NBA content. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers, so remember to hit that post notification bell so you always know when we're dropping new videos. And with that all being said, let's go ahead and get right into today's episode. We are going to focus on some of the trends, both positive and negative in the NBA. And this might be a theme for the entire week's episodes, kicking in for the first week and a half of the NBA season, because we want to get a feel for some of the things that are starting to percolate in the early goings of the season. Little nuggets of information here and there for each team that we can cling on to and see how they ebb and flow throughout the year. And so we're going to start with the Orlando Magic. The Orlando Magic's biggest question coming into this season was, could they advance into being a top of the half of the league NBA offense, paired with the fact that they have been an elite level offense the last 4 to 5 seasons under coach Jamal Mosley. And so far, even with adding Desmond Bain, even with adding Tyus Jones, in the early goings, it seems like the answer is no. It feels like it's the same old Orlando Magic when it comes to struggling to generate easy offense, mainly from the perimeter in terms of creating open three-point opportunities. This team bamboozled Orlando Magic fans in the very first game of the season, knocked down 40% from beyond the arc in the win against the Miami Heat at the crib. Since then, they are 0-3 and have not shot above 35% from beyond the arc in a single one of their games, dating back to that Miami game, including shooting 32% in the most recent loss against the Philadelphia 76ers. The Orlando Magic are starting what will be a 5-game road stint for them, in which they are going to play a handful of teams that play very similar to the Philadelphia 76ers. And I'm not saying in terms of having the kind of talent, I'm talking about play style. The Philadelphia 76ers, led by VJ Edgecombe and Tyrese Maxey, with guys like Quentin Grimes coming off the bench, and having someone like Kelly Oubre as a small ball four for you, is a team that likes to play run and gun, up and down basketball. In this game against the Orlando Magic, they got up 97 shots. The Orlando Magic had 82. The Philadelphia 76ers had 97 shot attempts in this game. High up tempo offense, probably going to end the year off as one of the top 10 teams in pace of play this year. Up next, they have the Detroit Pistons, maybe not as similar in that regard, but very talented with guys like Asar Thompson, Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren in that front court. The Charlotte Hornets, very similar. The Washington Wizards, very similar. The Atlanta Hawks, not as much so, but a team that is trying to figure out their identity now with the newly added guys like Kristaps Porzingis and Nickeil Alexander-Walker to the roster. So, 2 of their next 4 games and 3 of their quote-unquote last 5 by that mark are going to be against teams that are high up-tempo offenses. Why does this matter? Actually, even if you go before that, before playing the 76ers, their loss before that was against the Chicago Bulls. Another team, very similar in terms of wanting to put a lot of emphasis on up-tempo pace. Why does that matter? Because the Orlando Magic, if you listen to a lot of the press conferences in the preseason, their goal to up their offensive efficiency was to start by playing faster. And the growing pains of trying to play faster is that you're going to turn the ball over a lot more, something the Orlando Magic have done. Let's go to the 76ers game where they turned the ball over 13 times to the Sixers 7, and the Sixers got 20 points off of those 13 turnovers. So you're going to turn the ball over at a high rate. You're going to shoot early in the shot clock, which means that you're not fully maximizing creating an open look, open opportunity if you have knockdown 3-point shooters, which in the case of the Orlando Magic, outside of one or two players right now, they do not. And for a team that has really, really strong positional size with Franz, Jalen Suggs, I would say even Desmond Bane for his position is very relatively he's built well for what his positional guard is going to be. Paolo, and then Wendell Carter Jr. play not a jumbo lineup, but a larger lineup. You are sacrificing the ability to impose your will on the inside on a regular basis. In that Chicago Bulls game, a stat came out that said that Paolo Banchero had only shot 3 for 9 in the restricted area, the painted area, and that Franz Wagner was, I believe, 4 for 10 or 5 from 10 from the restricted area. And the first question I ask myself is like, why is Paolo only taking 9 shots in the paint against the Chicago Bulls, where Nikola Vucevic is their quote-unquote rim protector? And the second question I ask myself is, why does it feel like this team is overly forcing playing fast in the early going, as if they're not trying to acclimate themselves to adding a new talent? They're trying to do two things at the same time. This is a lesson that can be applied to life just as much as it can be applied to the Orlando Magic. Sometimes it's a lot easier to try to add one new thing at a time rather than throwing a bunch of new things together at once and trying to learn them all at the same time. Although it might feel like your progress is much slower, your ability to adapt to said new thing you're adding increases the rate in which you'll pick it up, because you're focused simply on just integrating that one thing. This team is trying to play faster, integrate Desmond Bane, incorporate Tyus Jones off the bench, figure out whether or not Jace Richardson as a rookie can fit within this rotation, balance the fact that Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner are both vying to be real all-star caliber players this year, all centered around Jamal Mosley trying his best not for this team to lose their identity built on defense, while understanding that if this team does not take a step forward on the offensive end, they are going to be capped out at being a perennial playoff team that can't get out of the first round on a year-to-year basis. That's a lot to digest at one time. How does that reflect? Not only is this team not been good offensively, but defensively. They've been one of the worst teams in the NBA, I believe bottom 7 or bottom 8 in 2-pointers allowed. This is in the paint and in the mid-range area. One of the worst teams in terms of allowing guys to get to the rim. And it showed in that Philadelphia 76ers game where rookie VJ Edgecombe looked like he was getting just about anything he wanted. And now, don't get me wrong, so far through 3 games for them, he does not look like an ordinary rookie. He is a guy that I think is going to be a problem in this league for a long, long time, especially next to Tyrese Maxey. But it seemed like he was just getting to his spots with ease. And that's with all-world defender Jalen Suggs out there on the perimeter, granted. Still on a relatively minimal capacity, given the fact that he came into that season with injury. But nonetheless, was kind of just able to get anything he wanted. And I saw him score at all 3 levels at an efficient rate. He finished the game off with, let me respect his shooting splits, 10 of 17 from the field, 2 of 4 from 3, 26 points and 7 assists, along with 2 stocks. Finished the game as a plus 13, despite the fact that this game, the game was a high-scoring affair. The Orlando Magic need to figure out the one thing they want to work on the most in the early going. I think the answer needs to be incorporating Desmond Bane. And Desmond Bane, the counting stats, you'll look at him and you'll say, Bane's averaging 17 points and he's averaging like 5-6 assists per game. But here's the thing. Here's the glaring number, right? Because, so he's averaging He is averaging 19 points a game, five rebounds, 47.5% from the field, 92% from the free throw line. Here's the thing that stands out: 27.3% from beyond the arc on 5 attempts per game. In the preseason, Desmond Bane was talking about wanting to beat his career average of 3-point attempts per game to help juice this offense in terms of being able to get more volume from beyond the arc. Well, first off, this team is only taking about 27 3-point attempts per game, which everybody knows in this modern NBA is middle of the pack in the league at best. Desmond Bane is only taking 5 attempts per game in the early going right now. And I don't know if that's because of some kind of passivity from him, or if that's the lack of spacing showing itself for the Orlando Magic, or if that has something more to do with him just trying to figure out where he fits in next to Paulo and Franz. But 27.3% is not only unacceptable for what they're trying to get from him, given the kind of capital they moved to acquire him, it also gives deja vu for Orlando Magic fans of what they got out of KCP last year. KCP had one job, or I guess you could say two: come in and guard and be a big-time perimeter defender next to Jalen Suggs and hit the three ball. Desmond Bane has two jobs: be a perimeter shot creator. No one asked him to be a high-level playmaker. Granted, Desmond Bane has shown that he has playmaking chops. He's shown that time after time with the Memphis Grizzlies in seasons where Ja Morant missed significant time, including last year. And to be a knockdown three-point shooter. The man has never shot less than 38% from beyond the arc since being drafted. 27%. That is that is an 11% difference from what his quote-unquote career low is since entering the NBA. Now, I don't know if this is like that scene from I don't know if this is that like the scene from, where we're talking about I don't know if this is one of those situations where you play it back in your head. I'm trying to figure out the best way to illustrate this. I don't know if this is one of those things where you play it back in your head and you ask yourself, did the Orlando Magic make the wrong decision? Because it's too early, right? It's too early to really peg that just yet. But I think you also look at what this means long term if this continues. You're out draft picks long term. Desmond Bane is under contract for the next 3 to 4 years. And the skill set that best makes him dangerous in this league, right now he is struggling mightily. I think the biggest thing for me with the Orlando Magic, and I'm going to wrap this one up because I don't want to, dwell on this too long, but the thing that gets me with the Orlando Magic is that they're a team right now that I feel like is just trying to figure out the kinks of having real expectations. And that's okay, right? This team is coming in with the thought from national media members saying that they should be a top 3 seed in the Eastern Conference this year. That's a lot of pressure for a young basketball team, regardless of the fact that they have some of the best talent in the Eastern Conference, top to bottom. When you look at Paulo, Franz, Jalen Suggs, Desmond Bane, Wendell Carter Jr., Anthony Black off the bench, Tristan da Silva is very solid as well. Like, they've got talent across the board. So I think the real question moving forward is just like, how long is this shooting slump going to stick? But to remember, this team shot a league low 29%. I think it was actually like closer to 28% from beyond the arc as a team last year. So this slump can go much longer. It can. The question is, will it? If it does, the Orlando Magic are going to be in for a really, really tough year. If they can right the ship, this is going to be a team that I think we're going to be having real conversations about in March and April. Like, could they make themselves a real Eastern Conference Finals kind of team year one out the gate with Desmond Bane added to this roster. That's just my thoughts on it. Next up, we got to talk about doubles. Okay, listen. I'm going to try my best not to let this segment go like 20 minutes because I could talk about the Bulls pretty much as its own podcast. Let me know if you guys want me to do that, by the way. Not necessarily the Routine Jumper Daily podcast, but I can definitely do Chicago Bulls content daily. It does not bug me at all. The Bulls are 3-0. The Bulls are the best team in the Eastern Conference. The Bulls are the best defense in the NBA defensive rating wise. I think it's 101. The next closest is like 109. The Bulls are playing high up-tempo offense, and they're getting it from everywhere. They got 21 points off the bench from Ayo Dosunmu the other day against the Atlanta Hawks. The game finished with Josh Giddey and Nikola Vucevic both finishing with double-doubles. Montas Buzelis came off of a game where he only played 12 minutes because he fouled out and came in and responded well with 16 points, 5 rebounds, and I thought was just a really good high-energy guy for them at the power forward spot, and I think he realized that he needed to play a little bit more under control, and he ended up lasting in this game he was tied for the second most minutes in the game with Josh Giddey with 32. Big time coming off of a game where you only played 12. The Chicago Bulls are an interesting team every single year. And it's usually for the wrong reasons, right? It's usually because this team is a squad that knows they need to hit the reset button aggressively. They know they need to get younger. They know that they need to accumulate draft picks. They know that they need to find themselves a blue chip prospect to lean into. And yet they always find themselves going the opposite direction. It's like the Chicago Bulls. Like, they know how to be bad, but they don't know how to be bad enough to make the pivot that's necessary. And when you're a Chicago Bulls fan as long as I've been, and for those who can't see, and for those who can't see right here, I have this banner that has the Chicago Bulls with Mike Dunleavy Jr. and Aaron Brooks, Joakim Noah, Derrick Rose, OG Jimmy Butler, Carlos Boozer. Been at this for a long time. So, safe to say that I've seen this team through the highs and the lows, and I'm not some fan that just bandwagoned off of Jordan championships. So, this is a team that perennially has picked 7th overall, 8th overall, 11th, year after year. Just can't seem to get high enough in the draft to get that difference-making guy. But this year, they've kind of done it a different way. And it's kind of through investing in just being a deep basketball team. Montas is good. It's okay that despite you paying $20 million a year, it's okay that Patrick Williams is playing 20 minutes off the bench. You know why? Because he just needs more experience playing valuable basketball in a situation where he can explore the studio space. How can he do that? Facing off against opposing second units. Ayo Dosunmu is a really, really good guard off the bench. Josh Giddey, despite what the Oklahoma City Thunder did or did not see, for the Chicago Bulls, fits a lot better for what they need versus what OKC needed. OKC needed another point of attack defender that can knock down threes to put next to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander alongside guys like Cason Wallace and Aaron Wiggins. And they got that in Alex Caruso. They got that in AJ Mitchell in the draft. For the Bulls, they needed somebody else who could help play high up-tempo basketball next to Kobe White. Now, Kobe White's been hurt through the beginning of the season, and I think that actually is a very telling point because the Bulls have been this good early on, and they don't even have their best player. Yep, I said it. You know who Kobe White is, and if you don't, you're going to learn. They've been doing this without their best player. They've been doing this without playing rookie Noah Essengay, who I think personally that's not a big slight to anybody because I don't know if he's ready just yet. Um, they are doing something that I think is gonna drive some Bulls fans crazy and is gonna make others excited. I think, and I said this at the beginning of the year. I said this in my very first podcast after they won the first game of the season. My expectations around the Chicago Bulls have nothing to do about making the postseason. If they do, they do. If they don't, they don't. My investment in this team is two things: who are our long-term guys, and how good can Matas Buzelis be? Like, can Matas Buzelis be in the most improved player conversation? Now, tough spot that he's in because there's a couple of guys who are really vying for that spot in the early going and a couple of really strong names, but Matas Buzelis has been really good this season outside of that Orlando Magic game. 19 points. 19 points to end, preseason against the Minnesota Timberwolves. That opening game against Detroit, big time. And then you have the Atlanta Hawks game. This is going to be a basketball team in the Eastern Conference that kind of shakes things up a little bit. And I know that sounds really biased coming from a Bulls fan. Like, what are the Bulls really going to do in the East? Oh, I'm not saying they're going to be any type of juggernaut. What I'm saying is that on an 82-game basis, this is going to be a team that is going to cause fits for some of your favorite squads in the East. And I think they're going to end up playing spoiler to real seeding sets when we get closer to the end of the year. Like, I could see the Chicago Bulls being a team that in the final 2 weeks of the year really jacks up the Eastern Conference playoff bracket. I could even see a situation where they do it almost to a detriment to themselves because instead of putting themselves in position to get Cameron Boozer or AJ DeBonsa or Darren Peterson in the draft, they mess around and play themselves accidentally into a top 8 seed. I really do. And the Chicago Bulls being a top 8 seed is gonna be a problem for a few organizations. A few organizations are really gonna question themselves when they look at their talent and they miss the postseason and they look over at the bracket and it says the Chicago Bulls are a playoff team. Teams like the Milwaukee Bucks, teams like the Charlotte Hornets, the Indiana Pacers. There's certain teams that if the Chicago Bulls make the playoffs and you miss, another team that I think is really interesting, like the Detroit Pistons, right? We'll see how that goes in the next game that they actually play against each other. But the Detroit Pistons have been off to a pretty wonky start to kick off the year. They've been decent, but questions there. We'll talk about them in a different podcast. But that's a team that's coming off of a really high horse year, right? And this season is a bit of their, was it real or was it fool's gold? Very similar to the Sacramento Kings a few years ago that liked the beam year in 2021, 2022 was one of those. Top 3 seed in the Western Conference. Really pushed the Golden State Warriors in the first round of the postseason despite the fact that they didn't win the round. And then they come back the next year and they lay an egg. And they come back the next year after and they don't look any better. They lose to Aaron Fox and so on and so on. The Chicago Bulls are trending up in the right direction, and the question is just, what does it mean long term for them? Does it mean that we found our core group led by Josh Giddey? We keep Kobe White, we keep Ayo Dosunmu, we lean into Matas Buzelis, and then we build up with a top lottery pick where we still a lottery pick, not top 10, but like a lottery pick, and we grab one of the best centers you can get in the upcoming draft because we still desperately need to fill that position behind Nikola Vucevic, who I think he actually is an expiring contract this summer. So there's still questions for the Chicago Bulls. Again, I don't want to overblow this segment too long because I could talk about the Chicago Bulls to death and really get into the stats and everything like that about what's made them so special. But I want to give it a bigger sample size before I really get overly excited about what I'm seeing. But what I can say is, so far, Nikola Vucevic is making last year's 3-point shooting season look like it wasn't a flash in the pan. If you guys remember, Nikola Vucevic shot 40% from beyond the arc, and it was making him look real good because the question was like, yo, is he finally a floor spacing center? And this year, he's shooting 54.5% from beyond the arc. Again, only through 3 games, but true shooting percentage of 76%, averaging a double-double on only 20% usage. There's 2 ways the Bulls can play this. They can either trade Nikola Vucevic at the highest peak value that I think he's ever had, or they can kind of lean into it and potentially risk having to re-up on him again, which I think is not great, but also not terrible if he's going to keep playing this kind of basketball. I like what the Chicago Bulls are doing. I like that Josh Giddey looks very much more comfortable in this offense. Josh, for context sake, I will read the stats out to you because he's playing well too. Josh Giddey is averaging 19.3 points per game, 6.3 assists, 8.7 rebounds, and shooting 41% from beyond the arc. Could Josh Giddey be in most improved player conversations? I think there's a real argument there. 2 double doubles through 3 games. Been really solid on the offensive end. The 3 ball is finally starting to land. He was showing signs of that on the back half of the year after the All-Star break, that like he is a capable 3-point shooter. And it seemed like one of those things that just slowly but surely had to come along. And he's still doing it on low volume, but relatively decent volume for a guy who was not considered even a remotely above average, maybe not even an average shooter, coming out of the Australian League. So the Bulls are trending in the right direction. What does it mean for them long term? We'll have to see. But I will say, as a Bulls fan, win, lose, or draw, I like the kind of basketball we're playing right now. And again, don't even have Kobe White back yet. So means there's even more in front of us. Victor Wembanyama. I mean, if you say his name 3 times, he might just appear in your house. I'm just saying. He's that dangerous. He's that lethal. He's that all over the place. 24 points, 15 rebounds in the win against the Toronto Raptors to make the San Antonio Spurs 4-0. And he did it in the most under control way I've ever seen a basketball player play a full 30 minutes. In 30 minutes of action, Victor Wembanyama scored 24 points, 15 rebounds, had 4 assists on only 8 shots, no threes, and got to the free throw line 10 times. The man got to the free throw line more times than he attempted field goals. I mean, what are we talking about here? What are we really talking about right now? He was a plus 35. The next closest on his team was a plus 20 Devin Vassell. Plus 35. Victor Wembanyama's advanced stats, and I try not to lean into this type of stuff too often, but this is just how ridiculous this man is as an offensive unit this year. His player efficiency rating is at 43, which is insanely high. He's averaging 31 points per game, 13.8 rebounds. He's doing it on 60% shooting from the field, 36% from beyond the arc, granted on low volume because he's really toned down the 3-point attempts. Again, he didn't take any in this game. 80% from the free throw line, a 68% true shooting percentage, and he's averaging 1.5 steals and 4.8 blocks. Let me repeat that last part. 4.8 blocks. Also, with 32.8% usage, he's only turning the ball over less than 2 times a game. what are we looking at right now? What exactly are we witnessing? This is a guy. I don't know if this is a hot take or not. Victor Wembanyama can win MVP this year. He can win Defensive Player of the Year this year. He can win. He can win Most Improved Player of the Year this year. Shoot, with the way he's directing all types of traffic on offense and defense, this man could be honorary Coach of the Year this year for the San Antonio Spurs, as far as I'm concerned. Victor Wembanyama is doing literally everything. He's doing literally everything. And I don't want to discredit what he's getting from his teammates. Rookie Dylan Harper has been really solid. Very solid so far to kick off the year. And again, this team doesn't even have De'Aaron Fox just yet. Stephon Castle is picking up right where he left off last year from his Rookie of the Year campaign. And he's been strong at the point guard position for this team this year. Harrison Barnes, solid fill-in. We know he's a consistent 15 to 18 points a night. Just a guy who kind of fills in. So far this year, he's had a relatively slow start, but a guy that you just know on a night-to-night basis can be consistent, and you know is at least going to be a high effort perimeter defender. But Victor Wembanyama is just doing everything, and he's doing it under control. I touched on this when I first broke down Victor Wembanyama's opening night game against Cooper Flagg and the Dallas Mavericks of like just understanding just how beneficial it is to be 7'4". And, you know, I'm sure that this was drilled in his head over the summer. Because, again, he worked with Hakeem Olajuwon and Kevin Garnett. Two players that, despite having really strong perimeter games as far as being able to put the ball on the floor, having a pretty strong dribble package for their size, and having a pretty decent mid-range shot for their size, they were the most lethal around the basket. And I'm sure it was drilled into Victor Wembanyama's head. You are 7'4", with an insane wingspan, and the kind of poise and touch around the rim to be one of the most efficient finishers in basketball. And I'm sure that being preached to him, he kind of looked at himself and said, you know what? It was nice to explore the studio space, taking 9 3-point attempts per game, but that's not what's going to make me great in this league. It's going to make me dangerous, but what's going to make me great is by leaning into the thing that I know based off of my size, frame, and ability, I can exploit in the NBA in ways that no other player in the league can. Not a Giannis, not a Jokic, not a Luka. No. Victor Wembanyama as a talent with the ball handling skill he has paired with how big he is and how versatile he is as a side-to-side mover, both on ball and off the ball, both on offense and on defense. Victor Wembanyama is a special two-way player. He's the front runner for MVP. It might not even be close with guys like Anthony Edwards and Luka Doncic already set to miss time. And before the year started, I had my thoughts about the San Antonio Spurs, where I was like, I like Steph, I like Dylan Harper, I like Devin Vassell, and of course we know Victor Wembanyama in year 3 is bound to take a step forward in some capacity. But like they still feel like a piece or two away from being like a real playoff team. The piece or two away was just Victor Wembanyama showing us that he's just better. Very simple. The San Antonio Spurs are going to make the playoffs this year. That is a strong declaration I'm going to make 4 games into the season, and I don't care. The San Antonio Spurs are going to make the playoffs this year, and I feel bad for whoever they see in the first round. Because they're going to hate it. And for minimum 4 games, maximum 7 games, it is going to be a long series of dealing with Victor Wembanyama as a rim protector. It's going to be a long series of dealing with rim pressure from Victor Wembanyama, where he is just bigger and stronger and taller than everybody else. And if he continues to exploit it in the way that he's been able to do through these first 4 games, the San Antonio Spurs are not going undefeated this year. They're going to lose some games because there's going to be just nights where they struggle. But if Victor Wembanyama continues to lean into, give me paint touches, I want to be more dominant around the rim. Those 3-pointers are nice, but I'm only going to shoot them when it feels most evident. And just continue to grow as this high usage player that also can score at such an efficient rate, and that doesn't even factor in the fact that he's an all defensive caliber player. This San Antonio Spurs team, I feel bad for anybody. I feel bad for anybody that has to play in the first round. That's Oklahoma City. That's the Denver Nuggets. That's the Los Angeles Lakers. Like anybody who has to see the San Antonio Spurs in the first round of the playoffs is going to hate it. And it's going to be for one reason: Victor Wembanyama. This dude is insane. And I know we've already talked about him this year, and I'm trying my best not to overlap topics too much outside of the Chicago Bulls because that's my favorite team. So we going to talk about the Bulls every week. Best believe that. But just trying to contextualize what the heck we are watching on a night-to-night basis with Victor Wembanyama sometimes is just as mind-rattling as actually watching him do it live on a night-to-night basis. This dude is absolutely insane. And the San Antonio Spurs are going to be an absolute menace this year if they can stay healthy. And that has more to do with the health of the entire team, not just Victor Wembanyama. I think Vic has a ton to do with that, obviously, right? But if this team can be healthy, with Dylan Harper already being a productive rookie, with Devin Vassell having a strong start to the year, Stephon Castle picking up where he left off, you get back De'Aaron Fox, you still have Keldon Johnson coming off your bench. Carter Bryant is playing minimal minutes as a rookie, but a guy who at least has shown in his time on the floor that if there's one thing that's going to translate, he can still really guard at a high level. If there's anything about him as a raw talent for this team, the one thing that is going to stick out the gate is that he can be a high-level defender for this team. Yo, the Spurs, bro. The Spurs. What are we watching? Last but not least, the poor Pelicans. Zion Williamson misses his first game for the season. Not going to be the first time we hear. Not going to be the last time we hear that. Excuse me. First time we're hearing that this season. Not going to be the last time we hear it this season, I feel. The New Orleans Pelicans. The New Orleans Pelicans, bro. They lose by 32 points to the Boston Celtics, who can't freaking rebound. Without Zion Williamson, and in a game where your leading scorer is Jordan Poole, who shot 5 of 14 from the field, and your next highest score was your next highest score was your rookie Derek Queen off the bench with 12 points. 6 of 6 from the free throw line, though. I'll give him that. No DeJounte, obviously. Kevon Looney, who they picked up in the offseason, is dealing with a knee issue. He's not going to play for another few weeks, it seems. And now you have a bone contusion in the left foot of Zion Williamson. I told y'all the first week of this podcast that this was going to be my team to watch. Along with the Orlando Magic, by the way, which that was not a mistake that I put both of these teams in the podcast. It's also not a mistake that I started with one of them negative and ended with one of them negative. Because these are going to be two teams that I watch a ton this year, and they're going to be two teams that I'm going to be keying in on the positives and the negatives, the highs, the lows, the ebbs and flows of these two teams. And the issue for the Pelicans, to me, is just without Zion Williamson, they are just not a good basketball team. They are just not a good basketball team. I'm sorry. Jordan Poole cannot be your best player. And I like Trey Murphy III. I like him. I genuinely do. I think Herb Jones I think Herb Jones is one of the most underrated perimeter defenders in the league, and I think people genuinely respect Herb Jones as a defender. And I still think he's discussed less than he should as one of the top defenders in the NBA. But this team is soft in the middle. That's how I genuinely feel. No disrespect to Yves Missy, but I think that he's still raw as a rim protector, still learning how to be an elite level rim protector in the middle for this team. Jose Alvarado still doesn't look right to me. I think he's still dealing with something injury wise, or still just trying to shake the rust off of dealing with the injury from last year. Jeremiah Fears is raw, and he's a shot chucker at the point guard position. 1 of 11 in this game, finished with 2 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, and guess what? He had how many? 4 turnovers. That's what I thought. Had more turnovers than he had points. The New Orleans Pelicans can't catch a break. It's all rooted in Zion Williamson, of course, right? It's all rooted in the fact of if he's not on the floor, their ceiling is low and their floor is significantly lower. I'm really convinced, despite the fact that this management is super incompetent, so incompetent that they signed DeAndre Jordan off the scrap heap, who wasn't even feasible for a Nikola Jokic-led Denver Nuggets team where he only needed to play like 8 to 10 minutes a night. They need to go ahead and pull the ripcord. They might need to go ahead and pull the ripcord. This might be an overreaction, and we're a week and a half into the season, so it's not crazy to overreact this early, because what else are we going to do if we're going to record a podcast 5 days a week? Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. But they need to go ahead. They need to go ahead and really consider hitting the eject button on this whole thing. I'm going to give them till the end of the year before I really, really lean into that take. And I will still watch this team after they hit the reset button if they do, because that'll make them just as intriguing to me. Because I don't have to anticipate stuff like, oh, well, Zion Williamson is out, so I don't even know if I really want to watch this game right now. Or, so on and so forth. I'll be looking at who are the new guys and how they fit and what that kind of roster construction looks like after they move off of Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, Zion, Jose, Jordan Poole, right? I'm going to hold my bases on this until the new year, but my first initial reaction after the first week and a half of the season is that, like, the New Orleans Pelicans just can't catch a break, and it might be time for them to realize that they can't catch a break and position themselves long term. They don't have a draft pick this upcoming season, in a draft that has 3 or 4, I don't want to call them generational talents, because at the end of the day, that word gets thrown around a little too loosely nowadays. They're literally making my do-rag come apart. That's how stressful this New Orleans Pelicans team is. But they are a team that does not have their draft pick this upcoming year, in a year where, although the talent is not generational, these are guys that are going to be blue chip prospects out the gate. They need to get draft capital like ASAP. You don't need to do what the Brooklyn Nets did and draft 3 point guards. But the New Orleans Pelicans seem like a team that it wouldn't hurt that if they had 5 draft picks in the same draft class, that they did what the Brooklyn Nets do what the Brooklyn Nets did and draft 5 guys. Because they just need new life in this locker room, in my personal opinion. I don't know who that is. I don't know in what form that is. I don't know if you even need an entire roster overhaul to get to that. But this team, this organization desperately needs new life in order for them to, like, just feel like a competent basketball team. Like, they've got good players, but they're either always hurt or for some reason they just aren't clicking the way it seems like they should on paper. On paper, you have a knockdown 3-point shooter in Trey Murphy III, who has the upside to be a big-time on-ball player. On paper, you have Herb Jones, who's an All-NBA caliber defender when healthy. Yves Missy is a a high upside big who I think can be a top 10, top 15 at worst center in this league just based off of his defense alone. I think he has the basis to be that kind of player. I think Jeremiah Fears can be the low end, could be CJ McCollum. Unironically, he's kind of in a sense replacing CJ McCollum. But I think on the low end, as a high volume scorer at the point guard / shooting guard position, he can be CJ McCollum in this league. Jordan Poole, we already know what his resume is for good and for bad. We know that Jordan Poole can be your quote unquote best player on a bad team. That's his thing. He's a dude like your Kyle Kuzma in Washington or Devin Booker in Phoenix his first 5 to 6 years in the league. He can be the guy that averages 22 to 25 points a night on a bad team. We just know he can sleepwalk himself into that. This team has talent. I didn't even mention Zion, who is an all-NBA caliber player when healthy. I think Kevon Looney is solid. I think DeJounte Murray, who they've barely even seen in a New Orleans Pelicans uniform, could be a really good fit on this team when healthy. But I feel like we've thrown out that when healthy caveat so much with the New Orleans Pelicans that like you just gotta wonder. Again, it sounds like I'm already giving up on them. I am not. I'm not giving up on them in sense of like them being my one of my 2 league pass teams to watch this year. I will be watching New Orleans Pelicans basketball by hook or crook. Will that be self-torture on certain nights? Probably. Probably. This game against the Boston Celtics was pretty rough because it felt like it was over by the midway portion of the third quarter, top of the fourth. But they're a team that has more questions than answers. And I feel like for a team that didn't change that much this offseason to still be so much of an enigma in terms of what the heck they even are, that just doesn't make any sense. And again, it makes it even worse because they made that trade for the pick to acquire Derek Queen that now makes it where the Atlanta Hawks have arguably like the most valuable draft pick in the NBA this year, because the Atlanta Hawks could mess around and get a top 5 pick off of the fact that the New Orleans Pelicans are just bad as a basketball team potentially. I don't get it. I don't know if we're supposed to get it. Joe Dumars, you're an interesting fella. In terms of your roster construction, I'll say that much. I'm still gonna watch this basketball team, but boy, are they making it difficult to do so. And New Orleans Pelicans fans, I feel your pain right now because I dug myself a little bit of a hole by picking this to be one of my league pass teams, and so far they have not been as exciting as I thought they were gonna be when I came into the year. Nonetheless, this has been another edition of the Routine Jumper Daily Podcast. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Remember to hit that post notification bell so you always know when we're dropping new videos. We are recording this podcast 5 days a week, and I plan on dropping more content in terms of separate videos, reaction content, and all those other type of things as we get better at building up the page, right? We're going to be putting out as much content as humanly possible, and I think that the podcast is just a really good anchor / linchpin for all of that. So again, remember to like, comment, subscribe for daily NBA content. I will see you guys next time. Peace.